Emotionally focused therapy arose in the mid 1980s. At the time, there was an absence of clear theory and scientific understanding of relationships. There was also a need for research and literature on emotions and how they impact change. This was because there was intense focus on cognitive and behavioral interventions. Emotions were dismissed as disruptive and considered byproducts of cognition and behavior. Emotional change was believed to result from cognitive and behavioral change. Also, at the time, there was a slow cultural shift from broad community living, where individuals possessed large social capital, to a more individual way of living, with a focus on an intense connection between intimate partners, or a community of two. Emotionally focused therapy is intellectually rooted in Carl Rogers' humanistic approach, John Bowlby's attachment theory, and systems theory. Things to note from the humanistic approach is that EFT is grounded in the idea that it's essential to understand a client's perspective from their point of view, and it's necessary to validate that experience. It also depathologizes the client. In terms of the attachment theory, as Bowlby proposed, that human beings are social bonding mammals and that our ways of relating and our close relationships are actually vital for survival. So EFT is rooted in the idea that our nervous systems are wired by our long vulnerability as children, being dependent on our parents, and that this attachment survival process follows us through life. EFT is also grounded in Bowlby's idea of that our ways of relating to others can be adaptive and that they can change. Further, EFT sees attachments and emotions as a link from self to the system. So EFT synthesizes the attachment theory and systems theory. It sees that humans are motivated by attachment and that they impact each other through their relational behavior. Lastly, EFT found its theory of change by synthesizing the humanistic experiential theory and the systems theory. It integrated the importance of self as well as the importance of the relational system.
Emotionally focused therapy, as we know it today, started with Johnson and Greenberg in the 1980s. They worked together, reviewing videos of couple therapy, looking for elements that led to change. They then developed an approach that was grounded in both emotions and systems.
Greenberg and Johnson were the first to integrate the experiential and systemic theories. They saw that emotions are inside us, but emotions are also actions, which connect us to others. Johnson branched from Greenberg when she put attachment theory at the forefront. She proposed that all humans are wired to co-regulate. This acceptance of the innate human interdependency questioned the accepted idea that adults could be self-sufficient and should develop the capacity to self-soothe and love themselves. Johnson determined that attachment was the motivational system, and she put the attachment lens on Rogers' idea of the fully functioning person. She argued that this could be done through the attachment's affective dependency and help the person become a fully functioning person. She also branched from Greenberg in that EFT was focused on the relationship, while Greenberg focused on the individual. Further, Johnson focused therapy goals on strengthening emotional responsiveness, understanding needs, and facilitating the interactions and bonding moments, as opposed to focusing on coaching or skills. Johnson determined emotion to be the connection between the self and the system, and she took Bowlby's idea about attachment and purported that emotions are primarily about needs and motives. And she argued that our patterns of relating our needs creates the problem, not the emotions themselves.
Let's break down the key theoretical tenets to explore the underlying assumptions of emotionally focused therapy. So first, EFT is rooted in emotion theory. Emotion theory is based on the principle that emotions are adaptive and motivational in nature. So that means they inform us of what we want and need, and they orientate us towards action. EFT pulls from this theory and assumes that emotions are our first, often implicit reaction to experience and provide us with essential information for interpreting our world. There are primary emotions, such as sadness, that inform us of our underlying needs, And then there are secondary emotions like anger, which act as protective or defensive responses to more vulnerable primary emotions. Next, in relating emotion theory to attachment theory, Johnson recognized emotions for their evolutionary adaptive role in human relationships. This theory states that emotion is the language of attachment and drives relational dynamics. So close relationships are known to be required to survive and thrive within this theory. Therefore, in EFT, emotional accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement promote safe and secure attachment bonds. And these bonds are the goal of EFT. Lastly, systems theory lends to EFT the importance of contextual factors surrounding emotional bonds. That is, emotions are assumed not to just be simply inside of us, rather they exist in context with one another. When emotions are expressed, they generate a reaction in another, and these reactionary patterns create auto-regulated feedback loops. As such, through circular causality, relational patterns are created and maintained. So, how exactly do problems occur according to emotionally focused therapy? Well, based on a theoretical orientation just discussed, as well as EFT's roots in humanistic therapy discussed earlier, humans are believed to be orientated to growth with adaptive needs and desires. However, when these healthy, growth-oriented needs are repeatedly denied, disowned, or quieted, problems are said to occur. So this is not a result of a general deficiency, a personality, or an unconscious intrapsychic pattern. Rather, individuals are believed to have valid reasons for behaving as they are, and these reasons are unmet attachment needs. These unmet attachment needs lead to coping mechanisms that hindered the development of positive relationships and lead to a negative cycle. The negative cycle is a rigid internal and external interactional pattern. So this is where individuals are stuck in emotional states and their experience of others. And the relationship is also stuck in reciprocal emotional interaction that is self-reinforcing. The most common negative cycle is the blame-withdraw cycle. So this is, for example, where a partner may feel abandoned by their significant other and blame and criticize them. This then results in the significant other feeling hopeless, like things are their fault, and they withdraw from the relationship. And then this leads the first partner to feel abandoned, and then the cycle repeats. So to change these patterns, emotionally focused therapy is process-oriented. So that means change occurs in session in the present moment. History and family of origin will come up as relevant. However, there are no inclusion of future-oriented interventions or tasks and no homework. The target of change is emotional experiences and expression. As well, emotion is the agent of change by transforming rigid and secure attachment patterns. Within emotionally focused therapy, there are 3 stages of change. The first is stabilization and de-escalation. This is where the emotional needs are assembled and the underlying rigid interactional positions are accessed. The goal here is to reframe the problems in terms of the primary emotion, attachment needs, and the negative cycle. So, for example, criticism is actually a desperate need for love and attention. Next, restructuring interactional patterns. This is through reprocessing inner experiences in interpersonal contexts and developing new patterns that foster emotional acceptance. So this is not a corrective approach. It's not about developing communication skills or coming to agreement or negotiation within a couple or family. Rather, the focus is on growth through experiencing core needs and ways of processing these needs, and then developing those secure attachment patterns in the present moment. The final stage is consolidation and integration. This is where skills that are learned in session are integrated into old relationship problems and new attachment behaviors are created. Change is known to have occurred when the relationships are considered to be a source of security, protection, and comfort. So the prescriptive assumptions or the roles of the therapist in emotionally focused therapy are based on Johnson's dance metaphor. The primary aim of an emotionally focused therapist is to aid couples and families through this relational dance. And they do this in 3 different roles. The first is as a process consultant. This is where the therapist provides a safe haven for emotional experiences to be accessed in session. They do this by validating the experiences of their clients to allow innate self-healing tendencies to emerge. They use empathetic reflection and attunement, using their own emotions as a guide. And they engage in evocative questions to bring out emotions in their clients. They also act as choreographers. The therapist listens for and finds the hidden rationality or the order behind disruptive secondary emotions, and creates enactments of new emotional expression of primary emotional needs, which generates a new dance to promote secure bonding. Lastly, they act as a collaborator, sometimes following and sometimes leading. The client remains as the expert in their own experience, and the therapist is there just to aid the clients in accessing and assembling their emotional experience. Carrie will now walk us through the 3 stages of change or therapeutic intervention in emotionally focused therapy, with reference to the key techniques used at each stage.
So the first phase of EFT is stabilization. So during this phase, the therapist is really focused on building a strong therapeutic alliance with each client participating. And so during the therapeutic process in EFT, the therapist becomes a surrogate secure attachment figure in the lives of each of the client. And so from an attachment perspective, that means that the therapist will become a secure base and a safe haven for the clients. And so what that will look like is that the clients will feel comfortable enough to start to unpack some of their emotional responses and start to maybe work on some of those attachment wounds that they have. And so that's the secure base, so they feel confident enough to go there and try it. And then the safe haven means that they feel comfortable enough to come back and start to work through some of that stuff. So during this stage, the therapist and clients work collaboratively to formulate treatment issues and goals. And the therapist will clarify the process of emotional regulation and meaning making. In couple therapy, they will do one session with both of the clients together, and they will talk about what each client thinks are the presenting issues and the goals of couple therapy. And then the therapist will meet with each member of the couple individually. And that's when they're going to get a little bit of their attachment history. What has their attachment style been? What are their attachment injuries or ruptures? And then again, trying to assess for contradictions. So is there any violence? Are there any affairs? Are there any addictions? Because those things will interrupt the ability to come together and build a secure attachment. And there is an assessment that's 12 questions long that the therapist will go through with each individual. And then they'll come back and make sure that they have the same therapeutic goals. And so during the couple sessions, the therapist is going to stop and step back and be really curious and start to notice habitual patterns of engagement and interacting between the couple. And then they will make what they're seeing and the emotion more explicit, specific, and concrete. And so this is really starting to slow it down and really start to stop the couple when they're talking about something, to really unpack the emotion. It's not so much about the behavior, but their emotional response to what is happening, and then and naming it. And so during stabilization, it's just really bringing all that emotion up to light. And so by the end of stabilization, the clients are going to be more open to like learning about their inner experiences and really focusing on those patterns of interactions. So during stage 2, this is called restructuring. And so when we talk about the tango dance that couples go through in EFT, it all happens during this stage. And so it's really an emotional exploration of what are each person's core themes and triggers, and then it's really about getting them to understand what are their attachment needs, what are their attachment fears, and shaping attunement and helping them have responsive, engaged interactions with each other. And so this is the stage that really starts to help clients enact those patterns of interacting and starting to get new ways in how they can express what they're needing in a way that isn't blaming or shaming. So the first tango move is called mirroring present process demon dancing. And so we kind of break this down into 4 different interactions between couples. So the really short cycle of attack is typically looks like aggression, blaming, and then it's about who's to blame. And it kind of goes back and forth where each of the partners attacks each other. The second is the criticize withdrawal cycle. So this is the most common and seems to be like a repeating pattern that doesn't seem to stop. And it really has been found to predict relationship breakdown. So again, it's like this one person is constantly nagging and that other person is constantly withdrawing and pulling away. The third is called freeze flee, where both partners are burnt out, discouraged, retreat, and stonewall each other. And then the fourth and final stage is chaos and ambivalence. So this is where one person demands closeness, but when it's offered, it feels threatening to be vulnerable. And so this triggers a reactive defense, which pushes the other partner away. And so while the couple interact, the therapist's job is to notice specific steps in the dance. And so, really reflecting back what you were seeing and what patterns you're noticing. And it also includes what nonverbals you're seeing as well. And so, again, the therapist is kind of watching the couple move through their dance and what patterns of connection and disconnection are they noticing. So the second tango move is called affect assembly and deepening. So this is where the therapist really takes it from like the big picture of the couple dancing down to more individual and what is happening for each individual, what are their emotional constructs, and how does that person internalize their emotions. And so, quite often people hide their true emotions from their partner as well as from themselves because it opens them up to vulnerability. And so as the couple interacts, the therapist uses curiosity to really start to pinpoint what are those moments that they notice emotional blocks between the couple. And then, how can we help soften those blocks to attachment security between the couple? So, attachment process and default emotional regulation is really, really under scrutiny in this stage. And so the therapist notes how messages become distorted and block attunement between the couple. And so when they're able to identify what is blocking them from attaching, we're able then to turn around and to soften those blocks. So tango move 3 is choreographing engaged encounters. And so during this tango move, the therapist uses a lot of empathy to draw out those core emotions that the client is experiencing and really discover the core of the reality in simple terms. What emotion are you feeling? And during this, the therapist also normalizes any attachment wounds that the client may have. And this during the stage, the couple will share with their partner how they're truly feeling. And they just simply are there to refocus and offer direction when needed. During this tango move, emotions may be very heightened, and that's kind of drawing out, those core emotions for the clients. Again, recognizing that the therapist is there as a secure base and a safe haven. So if things go sideways, the therapist is there to help navigate that between the couple. So moving on from Tango Move 3 to Tango Move 4 is processing the encounter. So this is where once the couple has, tried that new interaction, then we're going to kind of break that down and explore how that was for the client that used that new response. And so again, it's just kind of like unpacking what that experience was like for the clients, how it felt for them, again, and then how did it relate back to the presenting issues that they originally presented with. And as couples kind of go through this process, the therapist's job is to look for any stuck or negative responses to new behaviors or new ways of expressing themselves. And again, the therapist is really positive and uses a lot of empathy to really highlight how difficult it can be to change those patterns of behavior. So the last tango move is move 5, which is integrating and validating. So again, the therapist just reflects new and deeper engagement of the whole process. So this is like how far they've come, how vulnerable they were. So it's very strength based, and it really is bringing attention to the clients that they were able to make changes, even though that's not their, default way of behaving. They were able to change, how they would normally respond to a new, softer way of expressing what they're needing. And again, it's just kind of validating and reaffirming to the client that they are able to continue to deal with emotion as it comes up and respond in a way that they're more comfortable with. So the third stage of EFT is consolidation. And so this really is kind of wrapping up the progress that the client has made. So during this stage, the therapist collaboratively with the clients, kind of do an overview of how far they've come and, reflecting back from the first session and how far they've come in their journey. And again, it's very strength based. So the therapist is going to highlight, what are the client's strengths and point out, how they're able to engage in new ways. And then together, the therapist allows the clients to explore, what is your imagined future? Where do you think challenges may come up? And then how are you going to navigate those, those rubs or challenges that you're going to have in communicating. And again, the therapist is just there as a guide and a support person to, help them, unlock old patterns if they come up. And then again, remind the clients of like those new patterns that they are able to establish. And again, so this is kind of end of therapy where the therapist really fosters the client's ability to let go of the therapist as that surrogate secure attachment figure that they have been used to throughout the therapeutic journey. So that
because the emotionally focused therapist needs to provide a secure and safe attachment base for their clients as they work through their distressing and difficult experiences and relations with each other. It's vital that the therapist stays completely present in the session. The therapeutic alliance is crucial in emotionally focused therapy, and the therapist should monitor and maintain and quickly attend to any ruptures that may occur with the alliance. It's important that the therapist remain curious about the client and their experiences and the situation, and that they continually reflect on process and link back to the stages. Though the therapist often acts as a surrogate for secure attachment, it's vital that they remember that they are co-humans walking along this healing journey with their clients.
I personally gravitate towards EFT as my current practice is embedded in attachment theory. And so I really believe in the power of attachment and relationships. And so when we talk about EFT, I really like how strength based it is. I really gravitate towards this idea that the therapist becomes the surrogate, securely attached figure so that if people have never really had a secure attachment before, they get to experience what that's like. And then within that context of that safe place, so that idea of the therapist being the secure base and the safe haven, the client really gets to unpack some of their attachment injuries and then explore what attachment needs they have, what unmet needs they have, and then how to get those needs met. And so when I think of it in terms of couples, I think it's really, really helpful because we get caught in patterns of interacting. And this can really help reframe for couples what they're needing, and then helping them have the framework and how to ask and express what they need so that their needs are met.
Emotionally focused therapy appeals to me personally because I like how it zooms into the individual and it gives an opportunity to explore their experiences and their wounds, like their attachment wounds or what's causing that distress for them. But I also really love how it acknowledges the couple as a system, and that distress that one person is experiencing really impacts their partner. So helping the couple understand this can give them the tools that they need to heal themselves, which I think is incredible and what I love about EFT.
Emotionally focused therapy appeals to me on multiple levels. Firstly, it recognizes the importance of emotions in our daily lives and how they affect our thoughts, our behaviors, and our relationships. Personally, I've found using emotions as a guide and really getting in touch with them and connecting with them to be really helpful in navigating my own individual concerns as well as in improving my relationships. Secondly, I really like how EFT looks at both the self and the system. It considers how emotions are not just personal experiences, they're also shaped by our social contexts and our culture. Third, I love that emotionally focused therapy provides practical techniques to use in session with families and couples that help to regulate emotions and build secure attachment patterns.